First, I'd like to thank President Hitt for his hospitality again. President Hitt, do you have any remarks?
We're just delighted to have the Board of Governors here again, Madam Chair, and hope our hospitality has met your expectations.
Your staff is outstanding. Your hospitality is perfect. And as I told some of your lovely staff today coming in, maybe they shouldn't treat us so well because we're like family. We keep coming back, but thank you very much. This was a very, we didn't have a long time to plan this meeting, and UCF always steps forward. You will notice the absence of some of our board members today. By having this meeting planned in just a few short weeks, many of them were out of the country or unable to even call in today. So I thank all of you that are attending and for paying attention to the most important issues. While we are in the middle of summer, university's activities are going on. I'm very pleased to report that thanks to a collaborative opportunity afforded by Enterprise Florida, two of the State University Assistant students participated in the state's recent trade mission to Colombia in June. Both the students and mission organizers reported that this was a wonderfully beneficial experience for all participants, and we expect to send other students in the future. We thank FIU and New College for supporting their students and giving them that opportunity. The work of the board task force on FAMU financial and operational control issues continues under the leadership of Chairman Lynn Pappas, who is in her real job today working on legal issues and was unable to participate today. That task force met in Jacksonville on June the 21st. Our new Inspector General, Derry Harper, is now on board and will be a great benefit to that task force. Since our June meeting, FAMU has been advised that its accreditation is on probation, and the university has been advised of its SACS concerns. Many of these concerns are known to us and the university, and they will track them, and we are going to work through those concerns. President Ammons is now on board, and we look forward to working with you and working with the task force and your board of trustees to make this the beginning for FAMU. Our chancellor has been working with legislators, keeping them advised of our work. He served on a panel at the meeting of the Southern Regional Education Board. I also want to thank all of our staff. They are covering multiple issues, working very hard. Those of you that attend these meetings recognize when we plan an extra meeting, it's very difficult on the staff. The chancellor loves it, but the staff works hard, and I thank all of you for that, and for the presidents for attending. I want to remind our board of our upcoming meetings on August 8th and 9th at USF in Tampa. And as our discussions with the trustees, as in our discussion with our trustees, we promise that we would meet twice a year to discuss budget issues, and later in the year, we'll discuss legislative priorities. We want our governance system to work by cooperating with our trustees. The first formal meeting with the trustees will be a part of the August meeting on Wednesday the 8th. I hope many of them can attend. The meetings will begin at about 10:30 that morning with a session on the national and state trends in higher education and discussions of relationships with the Florida legislature. I hope that you will all attend. And I apologize for starting late today. Our meeting this morning went longer than expected. We'll is there a motion to approve minutes? No minutes. Are there no minutes? Whoops. All right, thank you. And the board chairs that are here today, we have a number of them here today. I saw, are there any other besides University of North Florida and University of Central Florida? Diana Morgan, University of Florida? West Florida, thank you. Would any of you all like to comment?
Thanks for having us.
You love a meeting. You love a meeting. Thank you very much for attending. All of you are very welcome, and your input's very welcome. Chairman Edwards, would you like to report on your meeting this morning, please?
Yes, we were extremely fortunate to have an absolutely outstanding group of applicants for the 3 vacant positions on the Florida A&M Board of Trustees. 5 of these we invited to come this morning for an interview. All 5 were from out of state on very short notice. 4 of them made it here, and the 5th was with us by conference call. After a great deal of discussion, our committee is very pleased to recommend to the full board the following 3 individuals. The first would be Robert Brown. Mr. Brown is from High Point, North Carolina. He is an extremely successful businessman. He has a consulting advertising firm which works literally all over the world. Mr. Brown has served on a number of college boards, including the University of North Carolina system. And to my absolute amazement, he has received 10 honorary PhDs, which is more than anybody I've ever heard of. And we've nominated Mr. Brown to serve the term that expires in 2010. I believe you said, Vicki, we had to vote on these individually rather than as a group. Okay, I move that we select Robert Brown to serve the term ending 2010.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next, there's 2 terms that expire in 2011. The first candidate that we nominated was Mr. Richard Dent. Mr. Dent is from Columbus, Ohio. He's Vice President, CFO, and the co-leader of Victoria's Secret's Pink Group. He is a Florida A&M graduate, both an undergraduate degree and his master's from Florida A&M. We've been extremely impressed with him. He brings a vigor to this board. He also brings, as CFO of a very large public company, hopefully a tremendous background in accounting and auditing and in finance, and is just the type of person that we are looking for to help A&M, and I would move his appointment.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
And the third individual to serve the term ending in 2011, of which there are 2, is Mr. Carl White. Mr. White is from Boston. He is in the asset management business. He also is a graduate of Florida A&M with a degree in pharmacy. He has his MBA from the University of Chicago. Mr. White currently serves as Vice Chairman and Chairman of the Audit Committee of the University of Massachusetts Board of Trustees. He has been on many things in the Boston area of interest. Carolyn and I were on the committee which hired John Lombardi to be president of the University of Florida many years ago. Carl was chairman of the committee that hired John Lombardi to be president of UMass Amherst. John, as you might have heard, is now going to LSU. But we're also extremely impressed with Carl, and I would move his appointment.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I would just quickly say in concluding that this was the first time using this particular system for this many applicants. I think we were extremely pleased with the way that it worked. The staff did a great job in setting this up, and I would like to personally thank all of those individuals who helped us in obtaining the number of applicants and the high quality applicants that we had. As you heard from the 3 that we just mentioned to you, those people could serve on any board in the country. And with that, that concludes our report.
Chairman Edwards, I want to thank you for taking on this task. It's very difficult to ask people to apply and have the discussion in the sunshine. We had outstanding applicants. Many of them that were not interviewed today would serve beautifully on any University Board of Trustees, so thank you for a job well done. This is an important moment for the Board of Governors, not just for the Board of Governors, but for the state university system. I want to thank Governor Krish. Yesterday, he took time from his busy schedule to call and express his support for our university system. He said he recognizes the value of the state university system. After all, he was a graduate of the state university system, and knows that the universities are important to the state, important in many ways, and he supports our system. He recognizes the value of our quality product and is dedicated to access to all our citizens who are qualified. To that point, let me remind you that in his budget request, he funded enrollment. He supported the differential tuition plan that will generate additional revenue for 3 of our universities, UF, FSU, and USF. He believes that we can work together to make the university system competitive and that our state deserves a great system. He expressed his support as he did when he met with the presidents. He was eloquent in his remarks that day. We sincerely appreciate his support. And no matter what happens on this board today, I invite him to be the leader in the discussion that works out the issues in governance of our university system, to lead the discussion, no matter what we decide today, to help all parties work together for the best interest of our state. We're all here to serve a state of Florida that is depending on us in many ways. I also want to thank the legislators, 2 of who are here today. They have given the support to the universities in many ways. They have tried to fund the universities while trying to find funding for so many other areas: corrections, Medicaid, children and families, and K-12. They have a very difficult job. President Pruitt and Speaker Rubio are great leaders who appreciate the importance of the university to the overall quality of our state. We need the support of the governor and the legislature to do our job on the Board of Governors. At our last board meeting, I said the voters created a Board of Governors to achieve excellence for our state universities. They entrusted us with the fiduciary responsibility for the state university system. They accorded to us constitutional status to protect and enhance the university system. This is a time for us to consider what we must do to ensure quality for the state, for our state, and for our system, both in the near future and in the long term. Now our job is even more important. Since our last board meeting, the governor has announced the immediate need for budget cutbacks, 4% now, with the prospect that it could jump to 10% before the end of the fiscal year. What is certain is that our budget for 2007-2008 will shrink by a minimum of $100 million. A revenue estimating conference is in August, and a likely special session in September may lead to further budget cuts. We've been here before. We took major cuts in the early 1990s. We took major cuts in 2002 and 2003. We have periodically received enrollment funding and seen administrative cuts nullifying these same funding increases. Throughout it all, we've kept the doors open. We've found a way to graduate students, thanks to many people sitting around this table. We've kept the promise to Floridians. We will do everything we can to maintain access. We're dedicated to access, but we definitely know that quality is at risk. Quality is at risk for our state. We continue to carry thousands of unfunded students. We continue to receive less than the budget formula that dictates the so-called funding students. We have the worst student-faculty ratio in the country, even after post-Katrina Louisiana. Our competitors, even in the South, are finding ways to raise faculty salaries and to expand their base budgets. North Carolina has raised faculty salaries by nearly 12% in 2 years. This year, our state is providing a $1,000 bonus for faculty and staff. That's about $630 after tax, or roughly $12 a week. That really isn't competitive. And as you know, and I'll say again, I'm just not a fan of dead last. Notice that this is not about finger pointing. We appreciate the legislators' effort to support us, and we are thankful for the support of the Governor Charlie Crist. We respect them and appreciate what they do. We also know they have very complicated jobs. We need to take this into consideration as we make our decisions for actions today. We have a big responsibility, the responsibility for one of the state's most valuable assets, our state university system. I've asked the Chancellor to consult widely. He has done that. He has sent you background paper on some of the issues that brings us here today. We understand there's a lot at stake, and he's worked very hard to provide all the information to this board. He's had many conversations with the university trustee chairs and with the university leadership, with the presidents who he respects, and certainly I do too. He has spoken with chairs of the respective faculty senates and with student government representatives. He has spoken with many of the state leaders and stakeholders. I also have spoken with many of the stakeholders in this. We have choices before us to ensure the quality of the state university system and to ensure to parents and students an excellent education. That is our focus, quality and access. The state deserves no less. Just remember, a great university system makes a state great. You can't be a great state without a great university system. I've asked the Chancellor to make recommendations to us today, and he has taken this challenge very seriously. Chancellor? Yes, first, excuse me, I got ahead of myself. I'd like to invite Senator Evelyn Lynn to speak. We have two legislators today, two that I respect very much, and I want to say about my friend Senator Lynn. She is a wonderful woman to work with. While many times we have not agreed on issues, I know exactly where she stands, and she invites me to share. We have great conversations, and both of us are dedicated to education in this state, to quality and to output. Thank you, Senator Lynn, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of BOG. It is a distinct pleasure to be with you today. I thank you so much for your hard work, for your commitment in very challenging times, I think, particularly for higher ed. I have been in the legislature now for 14 years, and during that entire time, and I am an educator, I have served in K through 20. My experience has been at all levels through the university system. And I've been really fortunate to be able to be there when we did all the K-12 reform. And now I chair education appropriations for higher ed. And that has been a distinct pleasure because usually in the Senate, even last year, I did education K-20, but I did not do appropriations. This year we have separated K-12 appropriations in the Senate and higher ed appropriations. And I always have to laugh because it's been my experience that every time I get appropriations, and you may not want to hear this, the funding for that comes into the state seems to go down, and I get it when we don't have enough money, and I have to say no a lot of times. But I will tell you that we have tried really hard, and it's been a pleasure to work with members of the legislature to have them understand that the status of higher ed in our nation, where we head, what we do, is imperative. Action, funding, support, demands, all of those are imperative at the higher ed level to our state and to our nation if we are to compete in the global world, if we are to compete nationally, and if our students are going to be the workforce that we need in the exciting times of high-tech, medical technology, nanotechnology, all the things that many of you are doing research on right now. We're attracting those kinds of companies, but we cannot continue to do that if we do not get more students into higher ed, particularly in the STEM courses, particularly in the STEM areas, in addition to the teaching. Now, we have had this I've worked very hard. I've been fortunate also to be working at the federal level on a number of committees where we've looked also at higher ed. It is the focus of the nation today. And I brought back to all of us in the legislature the fact that we've got to have goals that meet the demands of our state. We need to look at incentives for education, so that we don't punish you or even punish students because they take some excess courses, but rather have them explore, have them have opportunities to get into new fields and try new things. And so we have incentives that we want to provide for that and for so many other things. We want to encourage you to get more majors in the STEM areas. We'd like to increase the number of people with degrees in the state of Florida. We are far below the national average, and we need to increase that. And that means not only getting high school students into our schools, but also getting the adult learners who would like to go back and get a degree. And when we talk about higher education, we have to remember not all people get four-year degrees or doctoral degrees. Many of them get a two-year degree. But they've got to go on to higher education. It is the only way we will have the kind of workforce in our state that will attract business. Well, Florida is a model. When I meet all over the nation, Florida is a model in so many ways. Our course code numbering system is envied by the entire nation. The kind of data that we have collected is amazing. Not always as useful as we'd like to have it, not there when we want to grab a certain piece, but it's there. And we now have some projects going on. I think some of you in this room might now have some federal funding for projects that are going on having to do with data, having to do with tracking. The things that we're doing with tracking of students in many of your schools are just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I tell people around the nation what's happening, that they determine what courses students take and how they do with their cognitive thinking level, their higher level skills in thinking, and they determine what courses they take. They have so much that is going on in this state, and it's the kind of thing that we want to do around the entire nation. So in that respect, we are models, despite the fact that I have seen over the years and been there, as we have worked so hard on K-12, and we still have a long way to go. But higher ed has come back time after time after time. And it's not only in the state of Florida, but it's in the entire nation. And Margaret Spellings will tell you, we've got to get more money for higher education. We've got to provide support for higher education. It is the only way we can compete in this world. But we did do a great deal, and our 2+2 system, by the way, that's a model. And our dual enrollment early in college, nobody has it to the extent that we have it. We do more with exchanging and banking of credits, and we have to do more of that. But with all of that, we did provide dollars for marketing research in the research universities. We did provide more money for venture capital, or attracting venture capital to come into our state. And that's fine when you're in the research universities. But you know, we have many universities, each with an individual mission, where some are doing research, some are in specialized kinds of research. Some are specialized more in a four-year program. Some are specialized more with, I want to be a teaching college. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to have the same mission, and I think that's very urgently important for us to recognize. It does not mean, however, that we do not recognize that everyone in each of those particular types of missions doesn't have to have adequate funding to do all the things that we are discussing. Differential tuition, we passed it. That was unique. Nobody thought we could ever do that. I can't believe that we actually passed differential tuition. It has to be differential far beyond what we did this time. This time we did it for research. We've talked about even expanding that more so it would include a few more schools, but it has to be differential tuition for other things. Schools that cater, particularly universities that cater maybe to a specialized area, maybe in the field of teaching, maybe in just the four-year small classroom situation. But it can be differential tuition in a variety of ways. We also passed a 5% tuition increase, knowing that you've got to have the money if you are going to be open to the extent that we say, hey, no more, you're off on Fridays, we don't want that anymore. And no more closed on Saturdays, we don't want that anymore. We're saying if you're really trying to get access, affordability, and accountability, you have to have access so that everybody can get there whenever they need to. Be that night, daytime, evenings, weekends, Fridays, it doesn't matter, we've got to have access. It's going to mean that we need to concentrate, I think, also much more and be much more competitive in terms of distance learning. And we haven't even touched on a lot of that yet, although so many of you are doing such a fabulous job in that end. But we also said we wanted accountability, and we passed some form of accountability. Is it sophisticated? Is it where it needs to be? No, but we had, for the first time, accountability, because you cannot continue to only fund on enrollment. You've got to have funding that goes far beyond that. So we tried to do that. Unfortunately, the legislature was very successful, but was, in the end, stopped by the vetoes. Now, I have talked to the governor, and I have explained to him how very important it is for him to recognize that we cannot be leaders. Those of us in the legislature are not the leaders. We need to have our governor out there preaching access, affordability, accountability. I have explained to him that we have access in many ways, but we're going far beyond that to get better. Affordability, we're one of the most, we are perhaps, I think next to Georgia in some ways, we compare constantly back and forth. We are just about the cheapest high quality education in the nation. And then we have accountability, which we need to have. There's no question, and you have all agreed to that, and you worked with us in trying to come up with something that will show accountability. Unfortunately, we have a long way to go to convince people of how important it is now to say we need to fix the glitches in K-12, but it is now time to say, okay, the improvement, the reform, the urgency is now in higher education. It is your mission. It must be the mission of this legislature, and it absolutely must be the mission of this governor. Now, we've got to get on the same page, and it's amazing to me that we did. Mark Rosenberg has just been excellent to work with. He and I don't always agree either. But for the most part, we have all agreed that we've got to be on the same page, providing funding, providing access, and even accountability, because we've never had that in the university system. Some of you do it within your universities, but we haven't had it as a state goal. Now, we certainly need to do a lot more to increase need-based aid, because we're a lot of students who could go to school. Our population, I talk about this all the time, the population is changing such that in 10 to 15 years, the majority in our nation will be Hispanic, African American, low income. These are the students that we must be preparing better so that you can work with them successfully when they come to you. These are the students that will need perhaps remediation, which you don't do, and the kinds of support systems which you are now beginning to do more and more. But we cannot forget that this is the population that will be a majority, which is going to try to be the workforce that we need, that you must make the workforce that we need in our future if we are to be the kind of high-tech state that we expect to be. Now, I recognize your frustration in what has occurred. And I can speak to you as a legislator as I am, but I am also speaking to you as an educator, and I am speaking to you personally. I believe we needed the 5% tuition increase, or I would never have voted for it, because I had been known for working with constituents who are usually in the poorer sector, usually hard up on money. But we do need to raise tuition, and 5% was not too much to ask. It was a very small amount. And we did raise need-based aid. We are trying to make it easier to get Pell Grants on the federal level. And we have first time in college grants. We've got so many things going now. It would be the thing to do. The differential tuition was the thing to do. And I think you were extremely cooperative in the position you took of waiting until 2008. I appreciate that, and I admire you for being that mediation-wise, so soliciting to our governor. But we cannot forget how important these things are. And I stress all these things because while I see it's unfortunate to learn what has happened, I think we in the legislature tried very hard this year to get the kind of funding that you all needed, to fund things that many of you asked for that had not been funded before, and to work hand in hand with you with great understanding. I would like to see us continue in that vein. If you take the position where you must be strong in saying we need, we want, we insist on the 5% tuition increase, I can understand that position. And that would be a strong stand to take. How you do it, whether it's legally or just otherwise, that I can't tell you, of course. But I would understand that that is a strong position you must take. Especially in light of the fact of the cuts that are possible. And I mean, the idea that we're getting less money in again than ever, and it's not looking good as we speak. Hopefully you will not cut centers of excellence. That's one of the stars in our crown. So we have to find out where can we do it, and I understand you talked about freezing positions, you talked about access is where it is now, it cannot change, it can't increase. You talked about how you will limit in terms of the transfers and so forth, and I understand you're working so hard together to try to find answers. So I support that position of going forth on the 5%, and I speak only for myself. But I think that's an understandable position. I would find it very, very disappointing to see you join in a lawsuit which takes a totally opposing position to the legislature. Actually, we lose our partnership. We lose the wonderful, I think, camaraderie that we have built up. As you say, whether we agree on everything or not, for the most part, we are together right now. And it would really concern me that you would take in any way a position that would say, we're out to get you, and we're taking away this power. Because for years, the legislature has seen and recognized that it is responsible for the money. And I can remember some of you were sitting in my meeting when we discussed differential tuition, and I remember one of my members saying, I'll never vote for that. I'll never vote for tuition increases. No. And differential, that's giving the power away. It's our job. We're not going to give that power. I can't vote for differential tuition, and I don't think he did. I think we did it without his vote. However, that's how fearful some of the legislators are who've been around a while. But that's not the point. The point is, why should we be two opposing factions when we have worked so hard this year and shown you that this is a legislature that recognizes the importance of higher ed? This is a legislature that wants to work with you. I see the University of North Florida, a little concerned about differential at a point. Just don't worry, there are other ways to provide incentives for you. University of Central Florida, you'll make it next year, I can guarantee you, because of the way we can fix the wording and work with you, and you're so close. In fact, I think you've got so much money now going into research, you probably meet that requirement already. So things are coming together so beautifully. I urge you to please be strong in what you do and in the positions you take, but I also urge you to please try to work with us instead of against us. I think if we can work together, we will accomplish so much for higher education in our state, such that we've never seen before. And I really believe that this governor will get on board. He was new this past year, so it's been hard for him to jump on board with everything, including all the insurance and tax situations that we've had. But with that, I'll close and thank you once again for the amazing job that you are doing in the university system, and for the Board of Governors for all you're doing to make us a high-quality system and fighting for all the things that are good for our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lynn. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Representative David Mealer, a friend of ours, a friend of the university system, a friend of mine. He always has his door open for our discussions, and we thank you and look forward to hearing from you today.
Well, Madam Chair, Chancellor, thank you so very much, governors and presidents. It is truly a privilege to stand before you. And this is, as the chair said, a remarkable moment in time for higher education in the state of Florida. But I would just simply caution that, as Senator Lynn said, she's been in appropriations. When I was elected in 2000, I immediately was appointed to the Appropriations Committee and had the opportunity to serve in that capacity since. And what I quickly realized is that if there was an area of deficiency, it was the way that we treated higher education. And if you stop and think that when I was elected, it was shortly after the Board of Regents was done away with. And in the op-ed pages lately, we've seen some very rosy pictures painted about the days when the Board of Regents were in place. But I can tell you as a 28-year faculty member within the state university system that the Board of Regents in the past was not necessarily a friend to this institution or to the other emerging institutions in the state of Florida. And I want you to know, too, that the financial pictures painted back in those times weren't nearly as rosy as we were led to believe in some of the comments. Now, with that said, when I was elected, I saw a deficiency, and it was the way that we treat higher education. And I made it a pledge that we would try to change that. And I think if you look at the successive approximations that we've made in that short period of time, you should realize that Senator Lynn is right in terms of us trying to work and wanting to work as a partnership. Now, I'll talk about differentiated tuition for just a moment. Because, Chancellor, you in my office pinned out why we needed to treat some universities differently just by the sheer volume of their productivity. And I admired that and I respected it. But the premise of differentiated tuition was not to grant 3 institutions the ability to do different things. For the first time, I listened to you from the time I was elected about the impact of Bright Futures, the impact of prepay. And what we did is we championed through that bill for the first time a decoupling of Bright Futures. Unprecedented to have the chairman of prepaid come before us and say, we will work with you and we will do different things to make sure that we move in a different direction for higher education. Those are important steps. But the problem with the legislature is that when we do the budget process, when we do the appropriations, we do it in changing fiscal, economic, and policy conditions. And I have to tell you right now, we're about to confront that in this, you are, as a board, to confront that. But if you stop and think about a partnership, think about the difficulties that this state experienced in 2001. And all 3 key leaders in the state of Florida, whether it be the governor, the Senate president, or the House speaker, were in position at that time. And the decisions that we made actually worked to the benefit of higher education, because the Chronicle of Higher Education, I believe in 2004, talked about the largest percentage increase in higher education in the nation was in the state of Florida. Is it enough? Absolutely not. But those are the kind of steps that we're talking about. In November of 2005, the Federal Reserve Bank in Chicago brought together a group of higher ed people talking about the economic development needs of this country. And if we're going to be successful, it is imperative that the higher education system take the lead in that endeavor. And what will public policy leaders do to help them accomplish that goal? Madam Chair, on this campus a year ago, our governor signed House Bill 1237, which included centers of excellence, $20 million for world-class scholars, a commitment to the University of Florida, to the University of South Florida, to Florida State to help them achieve their statuses. Those are important steps in terms of working as a partnership. $30 million in centers of excellence in 2002 that returned investments to the state well over $130 million today, or last spring, on a $30 million investment. Last year, 1237, $30 million. This year, from the legislature to help higher education, $180 million for our centers of excellence. $80 million for genomics with the changing demographic in this state. That will pay for itself within 5 to 7 years in terms of just reduced health care costs. That's the way that we're trying to work with you. Now, with that said, I know that it is not enough. But I have to tell you, I'm going to step back now and talk about something that is very near and dear to me. And it is a governance bill. As you know, I worked for that for 3 years. There is, and if you look at the authors of the lawsuit pending right now, how can you not respect those individuals? But I have to tell you, when you read the content of that lawsuit, and you look at the 3 states that they cite, Michigan citing statutes from the turn of 2 centuries ago, and look at what's happening in Michigan today, highest tuition rates in the region, a quarter of the adult population with no high school degree, only 1/3 of the graduates of high school college bound. Is that the kind of system that we want to strive to be? The California system, the compact, the mandate, or whatever you want to call it, in 1960, a wonderful opportunity. My wife and 3 of my family members are products of that system, but a unique system that had unique institutional missions. And that's exactly what we're asking you to do. What are the unique missions? Our boards of trustees have done a remarkable job in that area. My wife is the University of California, San Diego. Its primary focus on science and technology. Look at what this state has invested in the hundreds of millions of dollars to attract those San Diego-based companies into our state. We have a moment in time where in your decision making, you can help this state with some of those activities. I have to tell you though, that when you look at that lawsuit, never mind the individuals, I respect them. I was appointed by Governor Graham to be on a statewide committee. I have a lot of respect for that. But right now, the problem with that lawsuit, as well-intentioned as it is, in my opinion, and we debated this on the House floor with hard data, it really does go against Article 2. And I think it could be problematic. So the only thing I would ask you to do is, it's hard to say trust us, but if you try to go on autopilot as California did, you can't control natural disasters or circumstances to guarantee that we're going to have this funding source every year out. I don't think you can do that. But I think you can see that this legislature's made a commitment to you to try to do better. I think the lawsuit may be problematic, and the only thing I would caution, as somebody that believes in you and has worked closely with you, I don't know if it is in the board's interest, best long-term interest, to join that group right now, because I think there are component parts of that lawsuit that are suspect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Representative Meagle. Chancellor?
Good afternoon, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. I promised my staff that my opening remarks would only be 10 words. And what I'm thinking about at this point is that nothing focuses the mind like a hanging in the afternoon. Having said that, since so many of you have raised the question about efficiencies in our system, and since we earlier had started an initiative on efficiencies, I would like to take just a moment and ask Ed Popple, who is Vice President for Business at the University of Florida, to update you so that you know that we are intent on truly using our system to mine whatever efficiencies we can for the benefit of our students and our citizens. So let me ask Dr. Popple to come forward first, and then I will return and share with you remarks as well as some action items for the board's consideration.
I didn't quite understand the hanging part. Good afternoon, governors. As Chancellor Rosenberg said, I am Ed Popple, Vice President of Business Affairs at the University of Florida, as well as Chair of CAPA, which is the Council of Administrative and Financial Affairs. We represent the 11 state universities. I am joined by John Carnegie, who is the Senior Vice President for Finance and Administration at the Florida State University. Today we represent our colleagues from CAPA, many who are here today with us. John will briefly present to you the best practices report. As a little history, some 2 years ago, at the challenge of then Governor Peter Rummel, and with the continued support of Governor Edwards, CAPA embarked on a project to identify and implement activities, procurement processes that would improve our efficiencies, save dollars, and generate revenues. This activity identified some 200 different and varied practices. Those practices were then evaluated, quantified, and reviewed for their potential at each university. Today, John will present only 8 of those practices that each of our universities consider to have the best potential to achieve savings, efficiencies, or create revenues. In the report that was provided to each of you a few months ago, you will see the progress of each university. Many of these practices are now in place, and the efficiencies and savings are accruing. It is key to remember that these practices, while considered beneficial, may not be as effective at one university as it may be at another. We do not all operate the same, and to assess each university with the same measure would be unfair. For example, the University of Florida is saving some $6 million each year with the FICA alternative plan, but this practice would most likely cost New College more to administer than they could save. Likewise, we have suggested a vehicle procurement contract, but many of our universities achieve the same savings by utilizing local vehicle contracts with their county sheriff's office or school board. The results are equally effective. While we can assure you that each of us in the SUS are constantly reviewing and evaluating how we can save funds, each of our universities are frequent recipients of the Davis Productivity Awards that are awarded by the Davis family in the state of Florida. Each procurement office is aware of the best practices, and we are committed to continuing this process to achieve the best utilization of funds possible. We believe these best practices have and will provide savings to assist with the budgetary challenges we are constantly facing. John will now review the 8 practices with each of you. John.
Good afternoon. As Ed mentioned, we appeared before the Board of Governors about 1 year ago and presented some examples of best practices that had surfaced from the CAFA organization. You asked that we return in 6 months to report our progress. Thus, we completed last fall the subdate that you have in your folder. The report we prepared, which is dated March 2007. It's on tab 2 of this particular book. We've been delayed from reporting to you for various reasons, and I'm here today to tell you that the universities are working hard to find success with the 8 best practices we chose to investigate. In my opinion, the true benefit, in addition to actual cost savings and enhanced revenues, has been the effect the best practices process has produced in terms of establishing an awareness of the value of collaboration and communications. While the cost-benefit analyses performed at each institution may or may not yield differing results, the systems are in place to allow universities to benefit from the work of their sister institutions. In doing our analysis, we considered 5 critical components of undertaking a best practice exercise: effectiveness, efficiency, adaptability, flexibility, and harmony. We boiled down some 200 considerations to 8 separate and distinct best practices that are discussed in that report. Because these are somewhat self-explanatory, and for the sake of saving time, I'll make but a brief comment on each of the 8 and stand ready to answer any questions at the end. The chart up here, the slide, you might follow along there. We'll begin with e-commerce. By this, we simply mean to take advantage to the fullest of extents in the internet in conducting our university businesses. Collection agency contracts. All 11 universities use private collection agencies in the recovery of delinquent debts. We use different vendors, have different experiences, different cost structures, and differing results. We are trying to benefit from each institution experience, policies, and procedures to develop the best contracts by the needs of a particular campus. Thirdly, the use of purchasing cards. All institutions have adopted the P card to conduct some portion of the campus's purchasing functions. Through a collaborative effort, we are finding additional uses, better rebates, better controls, and internal savings as a result of using the P card. Fourth, vehicle purchasing. We are looking at ways in order to get the biggest bang in our vehicle purchases by using, as Ed pointed out, state contracts or bidding along with local communities and county governments. We're also expanding our use of the more non-traditional vehicles on campus, be it motorcycles, bicycles, golf carts, buses, and certainly the hybrids. Fifth, maintenance service agreements. Our institutions use a variety of equipment in the conduct of business. It must be kept operational to minimize disruption on the campus and maintained at a reasonable cost. Each campus has made decisions on such agreements to meet their needs, and we are learning from each other how to improve our services and expectations. Sixth, strategic sourcing and purchasing. This is the project I explained last summer, whereby the university takes the painstaking steps to research, identify, and the important process of data mining efforts to know our products even better than our vendors who are selling them. Then we use the information to extract the best possible prices and best services we can for our institutions. It's time-consuming and complex, but the results are worth the effort. Savings are in the millions of dollars where there have been successes and where the level of purchase will allow it to yield those kind of results. Thus, for instance, at my campus, we've applied this approach to office supplies, courier services, laboratory services, computer purchases, electronic purchasing, and now we're looking at the construction process. Seventh, FICA alternative plan, again mentioned by Ed. This program allows for considerable savings by administering pre-tax, tax-deferred contribution plans for our specific employees, namely part-timers, thereby allowing the university to avoid paying the 6.2% FICA contribution. In my institution, for instance, we're saving about $700,000 annually, which we feel very good about. But the University of Florida, with all of its part-time employees, is saving in the $6 million range. And finally, performance contracting. This is using present vendors, primarily in the utility area, to audit buildings, prepare designs, and conduct needed construction to save utility dollars. In turn, their payments is dependent upon the savings they accrue to us. In a way, it's an opportunity to get involvement, investment, and expertise from the private sector. Each best practice is elaborated upon in that 46-page booklet that you have before you. Before concluding my remarks and taking questions, I'd like to mention two limitations to this type of project. First, we are not always captains of our own ships. Changing constituency needs, governmental mandates, rigid compliance standards from accrediting agencies, statutes and rules, and the soaring pace of technology change, as well as resource limitations, will always affect our operations and goals. And finally, each of the 11 SUS institutions is a separate entity with different student sizes, different missions, different resources, and different cultures. We can and will work together to identify and analyze those means that maximize the value of our work. However, we are hesitant to endorse any best practice as one that should be unequivocally adopted by any and all of the SUS schools. Simply stated, we are different and one size doesn't fit all. Thank you for arranging this opportunity for Ed and me to report on our progress, and we stand prepared to answer questions or hear your comments. Thank
Are
you.
there any questions of Mr. Carnegie or Mr. Papa? Chairman Edwards?
Can you give us a wild guess as to, at the end of 6 months, the actual dollar and cent savings system-wide?
I'd do better if I just took FSU. We've done probably anywhere from $4 to $5.5 million in savings or cost reductions. Actually, more than 6 months. We've now got a year we've been into it. So 4 to 6 million in our case. And I suspect Ed's got over 6 million in just one of those categories.
Our 12-month estimate is between 12 and 14 million.
That's system-wide?
Yeah.
University of Florida.
Okay, that's the point that I was trying to get to. Obviously, all the universities are not involved as Florida or Florida State, but as members of this board will remember, what was almost a year ago when we discussed this, we talked about a goal of saving hopefully $50 million the first year. My point is, it looks to me like there's a very good chance we will exceed that goal the first year. And I want to congratulate you and the other vice presidents who are doing this. And Senator and Representative, this is one thing that I would really encourage you all to look into. Just in the one thing that Florida State did in the purchasing of supplies, that absolutely amazes me. Instead of the cash return, the scholarships was phenomenal. And there's some tremendous opportunities system-wide and statewide for this best practices concept.
I would think we could be a model for the state in many areas. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Popple. Mr. Carnegie, job well done. We'll look forward to another report. It's going to be exciting to see how much we save next year.
Madam
Chancellor?
Chair, if I may resume. Thank you, gentlemen. I also want to thank Senator Lynn and Representative Mueller for being here. We've spent a lot of hours together over the last couple of months, a lot of soul searching, and a lot of collaborative thinking about how we can best move our state forward as we move the state university system forward. First, I would like to remind you this afternoon about our mission stipulated in the Constitution. The part that is in particular of importance for this discussion relates to the mission to achieve excellence through teaching students, advancing research, and providing public service for the benefit of Florida citizens. That's in our Constitution. In many ways, that mission frames your fiduciary responsibilities as members of the Board of Governors. But truthfully, that's not where I really want to begin this afternoon. You hired me in part because of my experience in Florida and because of my experience in this system. I'm very lucky to have been in the system for over 31 years, since 1976, now in 4 decades. During that period, we have seen this state university system nearly triple in size. And of course, our state has radically transformed itself during that period. In the 3 decades of association with the state university system, over 30 years, we've had few moments of stability in higher education. I think that was, in many ways, one of Representative Mueller's points. We have been the subject of every fad or whim known to higher education. And yo-yo financial management, and I don't mean yo-yo in the sense of the street vernacular of how you do them. I mean in the sense of the toy yo-yo that goes up and down. Yo-yo financial management has characterized our system. None of you who run businesses would run your business the way we have run the state university system. In spite of that, we are very proud of what we have accomplished. And we can spend a lot of time on those accomplishments. Again, I think Representative Mueller and Senator Lynn pointed to those. During this period, I have learned a lot of lessons. Let me share 3 with you in the context of this declaration. Quality counts. So what are those 3 lessons? If you cut corners on hiring faculty, you will pay. Fortunately, We've hired thousands of determined and committed faculty. They have carried the system on their backs year after year in the decades that I've been associated with the state university system. That's point one. Point two, if you take shortcuts in building facilities, you will pay. We are very lucky to have the support for facilities that we have in this state. In many ways, it's as exemplary as our 2+2 system. Value engineering, however, saps the strength of our facilities, gives us facilities that do not meet the demands of the 21st century. We will pay for this. And we have talked about it continually and repeatedly in nothing less than the maintenance of those 3,500 buildings that we have in the system. So that's, in my mind, lesson two, at least for me. Lesson three, if you provide students with less than the best, they will pay. The world isn't going to wait for Florida to get its act together in higher education. And so therefore, while I definitely agree with Senator Lynn's point about access, affordability, and accountability, I'd like to talk about quality. Quality? What is it? Well, listen to the world's largest automobile producer and what the world's largest automobile producer says about quality. Quote, being number one is about being the best in the world in terms of quality on a sustained basis.